To be honest, I can't think of a better way to introduce Andre Walker, who's our next guest. In fact, I think it should be a rule at Talk Radio that every time Andre Walker's on, they play this first. Go on. Marvellous. Great stuff, isn't it? It's fantastic. Why would you want to ban that? Because you work for the BBC. What a collection of planks. Andre, very good morning to you, mate.
Good morning. You know, at election counts, we used to sing Land of Hope and Tory to the Labour Party, which I always thought was appropriate. Yes,
it's very good indeed. But, I mean, it tells you something, does it not, about where we have reached in this country, where we're even having to discuss the likelihood that that could be removed from Last Night at the Proms. I mean, you just get rid of Last Night at the Proms if you want to, but you don't have Last Night at the Proms without Land of Hope and Glory.
Yeah, well, it's the sort of Harry and Meghanisation of the Last Night at the Proms, isn't it? Because if you think about Harry and Meghan, they are the sort of people that appeal to people who would vote to abolish the royal family anyway.
Yes.
And so what's happened with this is the Last Night at the Proms now is intended to appeal to people who will never watch the Last Night at the Proms. I personally, look, you know, we're not going to have, you know, a Land of Hope and Glory on the X Factor. So, look, you know, some people will want to watch certain programmes, other people want to watch other programmes. The idea that just because you don't particularly like the Last Night of the Proms, it should change and pander to you, I think is completely sad and completely unacceptable. But it just talks to the wider thing, doesn't it? Nowadays, it doesn't matter what you do, it matters what you say.
Yeah.
People are not interested in your actions. They're interested in sort of wagging the finger at you and saying that you are, you know, a bad person. And constantly people want to tell you what to do with your life because they think it'll make themselves feel better.
Yes.
I think it's pretty pathetic.
Well, it is, and it takes us rather nicely on to the subject we were going to talk about anyway, Andre, which is the latest outrage, apparently, which is punctuation. I don't know about you, but I sometimes put a full... I actually had to check myself to see what I do. I sometimes put a full stop at the end of a text message. I don't always, but it certainly never struck me as being offensive if I did do it.
I mean, look, some people are professional offendees, aren't they? They absolutely love it. I remember once I was at this... I was doing this TV show, and there was this lady who, after everything I said, and okay, it is me, but she kept going, actually, I find that offensive. So I thought, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to mount a campaign the next day. So I walked in and I said, hello. I said, I'm sorry, you must find that offensive.
Yeah.
And she said, why would I find hello offensive? And I said, well, hello's English, the colonial language, you know, the language of the oppressor.
Right.
And then I said to her, would you like a cup of tea? Oh, well, you might find that offensive. She said, well, why would I find that offensive? Well, you know, tea was part of the British Empire.
Yes.
And you know, and in the end, after about 3 hours of doing that, she gave up. But I think it illustrates an important point, which is that there are some people who just enjoy being able to say this. And actually, I think that it's them who are abusive, because what they want to do is they want to change people's behaviour, people who are completely innocent, just in order to make themselves feel good about looking down at people.
Yeah.
I think actually anybody who's bothered about a text message at the end of a text message, a full stop at the end of the text message, is just a sad individual who really just needs to get a life.
Yes, exactly right. And I mean, the story that I was reading today sort of summed up what's wrong with society. Apparently, crime novelist, a woman by the name of Sophie Hannah, who I confess I've never read, has a 16-year-old son, and she decided to ask the 16-year-old son whether it was true that if you got a text message with a full stop at the end, it was offensive. The 16-year-old son apparently replied that it was, and so she's now adopted his view. And that's the problem. It's the infantilization of the world, isn't it? So this woman who's got a 16-year-old son is now living her life as if she was a 16-year-old.
I don't understand the rules on 16-year-olds, because if you are Shamima Begum, the ISIS terrorist,
yes,
then 16 is far too young to make a decision about your future, and you must not be treated badly. You must be forgiven.
Yes. If
you're Greta Thunberg and you're 16, then the whole world needs to listen to you because you are some sort of God-made human.
Yeah.
It is utterly bizarre.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. The idea that some pathetic child is going to tell us all how to live our lives, I mean, is pretty sad. But look, ultimately, the best thing is, Mike, I know you live your life like this as well. Ultimately, we're all going to offend the snowflakes. Might as well get on with it.
Yes.
You know? And actually, I find it quite good fun, actually. And sometimes I appear on TV show the other day talking about overweight people. And apparently I'm not only fat shaming people, but I was also a misogynist as well.
Right.
Amen to that.
Well done.
I quite enjoyed it.
But the trouble is, right, that as you say, no matter what you say, no matter where you go, no matter who you talk to, you're going to offend someone. So you might as well go the full Monty. It's the old sheep as well as a lamb conversation, isn't it? You might as well be hung for one as much as the other. But this is the trouble now. You have to be quite careful, given what you do for a living and what I do for a living, to make sure that you don't overstep the mark. But at the same time, common sense surely has to prevail in this situation. And I think the problem now for these snowflakes is that they're worrying about so much that actually the really serious stuff doesn't even get a look in. I mean, if you're really seriously going to tell me that you're offended by a full stop, then where do you get... What happens when you start talking about racism?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, actually, there is something where I would have some sympathy with these snowflake young people. If you are worried about a full stop at the end of a text message, then that does not sound like you are somebody who is particularly politically empowered,
no,
or somebody who feels that they have a particular stake in society. And if I was going to go for a wider point, I would say that, look, the lack of democracy caused by the European Union, the lack of ability to own your own home, the lack of ability potentially to enter education without large levels of debt.
Yeah.
Potentially that is part of the reason why these people are attempting to gain power through language. But, you constantly see this, I think, with the black community, who are constantly finding a new word to be offended about in terms of how they are described. And I've often thought it's nothing to do with the word. It's actually to do with the fact they don't feel empowered at all. And maybe we need to do something about that and kind of engage young people more in the country. But as I say, if you live in a country where whichever way you vote, nothing changes, and you don't have a stake in capitalism because you can't own your own home, then actually, potentially that is the wider problem.
Well, you would think that's what people might be more worried about. Also, if I was at university right now, I'd be a bit more worried about whether there's going to be an economy to get a job in by the time I come out of it, rather than actually whether or not there's a full stop at the end of your latest rejection letter.
Well, but if you can't do anything about it, then maybe worrying about the full stop is the only thing you can do. And I think that's my point. If you look at the lockdown, if you are 16, 17, 18, there is virtually no chance whatsoever of you getting sick with coronavirus. And yet your GCSEs and A-levels will have been cancelled. You'll have been grounded for 6 months. Your university place will be a complete mess. The economy will have declined by 20%. And actually, fundamentally, your future will have been mortgaged up in order to keep you under house arrest. And so I suspect you're not going to be too happy with what's going on. And actually, I think that we see the effects of that manifesting itself in multiple ways. One of them is these illegal raves and parties and whatever, where people are just so sick of being cooped up that now they've taken to lawlessness. And I think it's also being angry about all sorts of crazy things. The idea that attacking British police is going to improve policing in Milwaukee, as an example, was obviously ludicrous, but it was something that did nonetheless happen.
Yeah. No, absolutely right. Andre, listen, great to talk to you. See you back here very, very soon. Andre Walker's been hosting the early morning show here on Talk Radio. He'll be back very shortly with that, of course.